I buried my father on a rainy Thursday, thinking the worst part of my week was over, but just hours after the funeral, my brother handed me a letter, and my entire world collapsed. Inside was a DNA test. His daughter wasn't his, she was mine, or more accurately, my husband's. The man I'd loved, trusted, and built a life with had fathered a child with my sister-in-law right under our roof. I laughed, then I cried, then I felt something else entirely, a quiet, growing rage. I didn't know what I'd do next. But I knew one thing. I wouldn't be silent anymore. The funeral was held under a sky that couldn't decide if it wanted to mourn with us or not. A stubborn drizzle hung in the air, thick enough to feel, light enough to ignore. I stood by my father's casket, watching raindrops cling to the polished mahogany like tears that didn't belong to anyone in particular. My black dress clung to my skin, my heels sank slightly into the wet grass, and I kept my eyes trained on the priest's hands because looking at people's faces felt like a betrayal of my own grief. They called me the strong one. Natalie, the composed daughter. Natalie, the one who always had it together. And today they expected nothing less. I gave the eulogy. I didn't cry. I said what a good man my father was, how he loved us all equally, how he was a pillar. The whole time I felt my brother Adam's eyes on me, sharp, unreadable. When I finally sat down beside him, he leaned over and whispered, "Nice speech." "Thanks," I said, swallowing the lump in my throat. He didn't smile. People came and went after the ceremony. My husband Ethan stayed close, offering small reassurances with the press of his hand on my back, his murmurs in my ear. Ava, my 12-year-old niece, stood apart from the crowd, her arms folded tightly across her chest. She had always been a quiet child, unnervingly perceptive. When I walked toward her, she looked up at me with wide eyes that shimmered with something more than sadness. "I'm sorry," she said suddenly. "For what, sweetheart?" She hesitated, her mouth opened, then closed. "For keeping a secret." "What secret?" Before she could answer, my mother appeared beside us like a ghost, conjured by tension. "Ava, darling, help me with the flowers in the car." She didn't even look at me, just guided Ava away like she hadn't interrupted something fragile. Ava didn't look back. The reception was held in the house I grew up in, now Adam's, according to the paperwork. My father's will had been read earlier that morning in a quiet room with the lawyer, Adam, my mother, and me. It was brief. To Adam, the house, the land, the investment portfolio. To me, a modest sum, a few personal items, and his blessing. The lawyer read that last part without flinching. I stared at the list in my hands for a full minute before looking up. My mother's face was passive. Adam looked away. Ethan shifted in his seat, uncomfortable but silent. I smiled. Not because I felt fine, but because that's what I was supposed to do. After most of the guests had gone, Adam found me on the back porch, where I stood gripping a mug of lukewarm coffee. His voice was low. "I need to give you something." I turned, startled. "What?" "Something Dad didn't have the guts to tell you." He handed me an envelope, a thick, yellowed one, sealed with tape. I looked at him, searching his face for some context. There was none, just exhaustion and something close to guilt. "Read it alone," he said. Then he walked back inside. I didn't wait. I opened it right there, my hands shaking more than I wanted them to. Inside were 2 pieces of paper. The first was a printed email, an old one, judging by the formatting. It was from a lab, DNA Diagnostics Center. The subject line, paternity results, confidential. I scanned it quickly, my brain refusing to absorb until the numbers stopped me cold. Probability of paternity, 0.0%. Father, Adam Monroe. Child, Ava Monroe. It took a full 30 seconds before my mind connected the dots. Ava. Wasn't Adam's daughter, but if not his, then who? I flipped to the second paper, a sticky note scrawled in my father's handwriting, just one line. I'm sorry for staying silent. You deserved to know. The porch swayed beneath me, or maybe it was just my knees. I reread the report 3 more times. The numbers didn't change. The names didn't change. I looked through the envelope again, hoping for more. Some explanation, some mistake. Nothing. I sat down hard on the wooden bench and stared at the garden. The hydrangeas were in bloom, too bright, too full of life. My thoughts fractured in 1,000 directions. Had Adam known all along? Had Dad? Had Mum? Was this what Ava meant? Was this the secret? I looked through the sliding glass door at my husband. He was laughing with someone, a wine glass in hand. His face, his posture, so relaxed, so normal. I had kissed that man this morning. I had clung to him like a lifeline. I had believed in us. And now a new, horrific possibility coiled in my mind like a snake preparing to strike. Ava was 12. 12 years ago, Ethan and I were married. 12 years ago, he had been close with my sister-in-law. Too close. I remembered the whispers back then, the inside jokes, the way she'd ruffled his hair like an annoying little sister, even though she was older. I remembered thinking it was strange, but brushing it off. I felt the nausea rise and didn't fight it. I walked straight into the guest bathroom and vomited until my stomach was empty and my throat raw. When I looked in the mirror, I barely recognized myself. My mascara had bled down my face. My hair stuck to my forehead. I looked like a woman unraveling. I was, but not for long. I didn't sleep that night. I sat in the guest room of my childhood home, the DNA report spread across my lap like a loaded weapon. By sunrise, the edges were wrinkled from my grip, and my eyes were bloodshot from cycling through every memory I had buried, every moment I'd ignored, every red flag I had chalked up to paranoia. When I heard movement in the kitchen, I followed the sound. Adam stood at the counter, pouring coffee with the steadiness of someone who hadn't just destroyed his sister's world. I didn't wait for a greeting. How long have you known? My voice was raw, cracked from the night. He didn't flinch. I suspected when Ava was a baby, she didn't look like me. Mum brushed it off, said babies change. Why didn't you test sooner? I was scared. I didn't want it to be true. Then, after Claire died, it didn't seem to matter anymore until Dad found out. Dad knew? Adam nodded. He overheard something once. Claire was arguing with someone on the phone. He confronted her. She begged him to keep quiet. I stared at him, rage rising, and he just stayed silent. We all did, Adam said softly, even me, because we thought protecting you from the truth was mercy. Mercy? I laughed bitterly. You let me live in a lie for 12 years. I'm sorry, Nat, but now you know, and you need to ask Ethan. I found Ethan in our room, already dressed, tie half done, pretending this was any other morning. I threw the papers onto the bed. He looked at them, then at me. Where did you get this? It doesn't matter. Is it true? He stared at the ceiling, like maybe the answer was hiding up there. Then he sank onto the edge of the bed and put his head in his hands. It was one night, he whispered. Claire was drunk. We both were. It was stupid. It meant nothing. I didn't respond. My silence was louder than any scream. She told me later she was pregnant. I offered to help, but she said Adam would never know. She didn't want to ruin your family. She didn't want to ruin mine, I repeated slowly, but yours was fair game. He stood, reaching for me. Natalie, I'm sorry. I never meant... Don't, I snapped, stepping back. Don't touch me. Don't lie again. He broke then. Truly broke. Cried, screamed, punched the wall like a man who had just been cornered by consequences he thought would never come. The door opened behind us. My mother's voice was quiet. What's going on? I turned to her. You knew, didn't you? She blinked. Knew what? That Ethan fathered Ava. Her mouth opened, then closed. She looked at the papers on the bed. Slowly she sat beside them, her hands trembling as she read. When she looked up, her face had aged 10 years. Yes, she said. I knew. I've known for a while. I staggered back. You let me marry him. You let him in this house. You let me love him. I thought I was protecting you, she said, tears brimming. You had everything, Natalie. A husband, a future, stability. Claire was gone. What good would the truth do? It would have given me a choice, I screamed. She stood, composed again. You always had choices. You just didn't want to see them. Later that afternoon, I was alone again in the guest room. My emotions had calcified into something colder, sharper. I needed proof. More than a test. I needed to see it for myself. I remembered a box Claire once gave me, old flash drives, documents. Back then, she said, if anything ever happens to me, you'll know what to do. I hadn't understood. I hadn't asked. I found the box buried in the closet. The flash drive was still there. It took 3 tries to get the ancient laptop to boot. The files were unorganized, messy, but one folder stood out. Evidence. I clicked the first video. Claire in a kitchen. Our kitchen. Camera slightly tilted. She looked nervous. The angle shifted. Ethan entered the frame. She touched his arm. He flinched. Their voices were muffled, but the tension was clear. I'm not going to lie forever, she said. You promised, he hissed. Not if it kills me inside. The second video was longer, Claire speaking directly to the camera. If this ever reaches Natalie, I'm sorry. I tried to keep this secret to protect you, but if I disappear or if anything happens, you need to know. It wasn't just an affair. It was control, manipulation. He made me feel like it was my fault, that I owed him. She paused, eyes filled with tears. He told me, if you keep the baby, that's your problem. But I couldn't give her up. Ava deserved a chance, even if it meant lying to everyone. The screen faded. I stared at the laptop. My breath caught in my chest. Claire hadn't just made a mistake. She had been coerced, cornered. I closed the laptop slowly. This wasn't about a one-night mistake anymore. It was about power and silence and all the ways people weaponize love to keep you quiet. I didn't say anything when I sent Ethan the video. No explanation, no threat, just the file attached to a blank message. 5 minutes passed, then 10. I watched the little scene indicator appear. And then nothing. No call, no reply, just silence. By the time I came downstairs, his closet was half empty. He was gone. I didn't chase him. I didn't need to. I had spent years following behind a man who only ever looked forward, never back. But the silence didn't last long. 2 days later, a police officer knocked on my door. He said Ethan had been found near the river, standing on the edge of a pedestrian bridge. He wasn't hurt, he hadn't jumped, but a crowd had gathered and someone had called 911. When the officers arrived, he was crying, rambling, saying things like, "I lost everything," and "I don't know what's real anymore." The officer spoke gently. He asked us to let you know. Let me know what? That he was pretending to be broken? That he wanted to rewrite the story with himself as the victim? I closed the door in the officer's face. Within a week, the fallout began. Rumours swirled. Ethan told people I had fabricated the whole thing. That the DNA test was fake. That I had a breakdown. That I'd been unstable for years. He leaked parts of our private messages, twisted to look like emotional outbursts. He told friends I had jealousy issues, that I was obsessed with Ava, that I was controlling. At work, I was quietly pulled aside by HR. They said they were concerned about my mental well-being after multiple anonymous complaints. I wasn't fired, but I was asked to take a leave of absence. Indefinitely. I left the building that day and never went back. My phone became a ghost town. Messages stopped. Invitations dried up. People I'd known for years, people who had hugged me at my father's funeral, disappeared. Only Adam stayed. And Ava. One night, I found Ava sitting on my porch steps, holding a small spiral notebook. Her hands trembled as she passed it to me. "It's my journal," she whispered. "From the last few years. I wrote about Mom and him." I didn't open it right away. I sat with her instead. We said nothing for a long time. When I read it later, I had to stop every few pages. The pain was too much. She had written about watching her mother cry late at night, sitting on the bathroom floor with the door half closed. She described how Ethan would visit when Adam wasn't home. How Claire would pretend nothing happened, but afterward she'd always look sick, small, ashamed. I used to think they were just talking, Ava had written, but I knew something was wrong. I didn't know what to call it. Now I think I do. The word she'd underlined: manipulation. Near the end of the journal, there was a drawing. Ava had sketched a girl sitting on a bench, clutching a photo of a man with half his face torn off. The caption read, "The truth is what's left after the mask falls." I cried for hours that night, not just for Claire, not just for Ava, for myself, for believing I'd been spared the worst when really I had just been blind to it. And then, like a final slap from the universe, I found something else. I was going through old family files, looking for a copy of Dad's will, some legal closure, anything concrete to hold on to. That's when I found the email. It was from my mother to my father, dated 3 weeks before his death. "If you try to exclude Adam from the will, I swear to God I will tell Natalie everything about Ethan. You know I will. Don't make me do that to her. Just divide it evenly and let it be done." My chest tightened. She had known. She had known everything. She hadn't just stayed silent. She had weaponized the truth, turned it into a bargaining chip, traded my right to the truth for property, for the illusion of peace. I sank to the floor, the laptop warm against my knees, the words burning themselves into my brain. My mother hadn't protected me. She had protected the lie. The email haunted me for days. I read it over and over, hoping I'd misunderstood, that the tone was misread, that maybe my mother had been bluffing. But the deeper I went, the clearer it became. She hadn't just known, she had orchestrated it all. I turned back to the box of Claire's files. There was one USB I hadn't touched yet, labelled simply for Natalie. I almost didn't plug it in. I was scared, not of what it would show, but of what I'd become after watching it. Inside was a single audio file. I hit play. My father's voice filled the room. "If you're hearing this, sweetheart, then your mother has won. Again, I never had the courage to tell you while I was alive. I let her silence me, like she silenced Claire. Like she's trying to silence the truth. I'm sorry." I covered my mouth. My legs gave out, and I sat on the floor as his voice cracked. "I wanted to rewrite the will. I wanted you to have what you deserved, but she threatened me. Said she'd destroy Ethan if I didn't comply. And I believed her. I believed her, Natalie, because I've seen what she's capable of. I watched her pretend Claire's pregnancy was a gift to the family, even after she caught them in the act. She called it an accident, then used it as leverage. She turned your pain into power." Silence. Then one final breath. "I hope one day you forgive me, but more than that, I hope you destroy her." The recording ended. I sat for a long time, unmoving, staring at the blank screen. Then I stood up and pulled out a notepad. I began writing line by line, dates, names, evidence, inconsistencies. Everything that had been done to me, everything that had been done through me. It wasn't just silence anymore. It was a strategy. I called Adam at 2:17 a.m. "I need you on my side," I said, "because I'm going to burn it all down." He didn't ask questions. He didn't sound surprised. He just said, "Okay." By morning, I had a plan. Step 1, build a team. I reached out to Lauren, a friend from college who had become a successful investigative journalist. When I sent her the documents, she responded in under 10 minutes. "This is bigger than family drama. This is abuse, coercion, legal manipulation. I'm in." Next was Mason, a therapist I'd once interviewed for a corporate wellness program. He specialized in narcissistic abuse and gaslighting recovery. When I explained the situation, he agreed to consult off the record. "What they did to you," he said, "was systemic and calculated. You're not crazy, you were conditioned." Finally, I found a lawyer, a sharp, brutally direct woman named Sheila, who read the will and laughed out loud. "Oh, honey," she said, "are ye there? Played a caddy, laid you like a piano." But now we play back. Step 2, set the stage. I called my mother, told her I wanted to move past the hurt, that I was inviting everyone over for dinner, that I just wanted one evening to heal. She was suspicious, but the promise of reconciliation was too tempting. She agreed. Ethan showed up out of guilt, or maybe fear. Adam brought Ava, who clung to his side. My mother wore her pearls. I had the table set perfectly, candles lit, wine poured, food catered and plated like I'd spent hours in the kitchen. I made small talk, laughed, played the role. None of them noticed the small black dot on the bookshelf. The camera blinked once, recording. We sat, we ate. I offered to make a toast. "To family," I said, raising my glass. "To truth and to the end of silence." The clink of silverware was the only sound in the room. My heart pounded, but my face didn't show it. I waited until the last bite of dessert had been swallowed. Then I stood, holding my wine glass. "There's something I'd like to share," I said calmly. My mother raised an eyebrow. Suspicious. Ethan stiffened. Adam looked between us, already bracing for impact. Ava stared down at her plate. I reached under the table and pulled out a folder. One by one, I laid the contents in front of them like cards on a table. First, Claire's recorded confession. I hit play. Her voice filled the room, raw and trembling. She talked about Ethan, about manipulation, about feeling trapped. She said she was sorry for lying to me, sorry for letting fear silence her. Ethan's face turned white. He opened his mouth, but I raised a finger. I'm not done. Next, the audio file from my father, his admission, his guilt, his apology. My mother's lips pressed into a line. Her fingers clenched the edge of her napkin. She didn't blink. Then the video of Ethan and Claire in the kitchen. The words were muffled, but the tension was undeniable. The betrayal oozed through the screen. Finally, I pulled out Ava's journal. I didn't read it aloud. I just slid it across the table to Ethan. She trusted you, I said, and you turned that trust into silence, into pain. Ava began to cry, quietly at first, then in hiccuping sobs that broke something in the air. I wish someone had told me, she whispered. I wish I didn't have to find out this way. Adam stood. He looked at our mother like she was a stranger. You knew, he said. You knew everything and said nothing. She didn't deny it. You protected him, not your daughter, not your granddaughter, him. You don't understand, she began. No, he cut in. I understand perfectly. You chose your image over your own children. The silence that followed was heavy, toxic. I reached for the last paper in the folder, a folded sheet with my attorney's letterhead. I'm pressing charges, I said, for coercion, for unlawful interference with inheritance, for conspiring to conceal abuse. My mother's expression didn't crack, but her hands trembled. Ethan pushed back from the table. His chair scraped against the floor. You're insane, he muttered. You're actually insane. You're unemployed, I replied, or you will be by morning. Lauren's article goes live at 6 a.m. with footage and names. His eyes darted around the table, looking for help, for someone to defend him. No one spoke. He stormed out. My mother stood next, shakily. You're ruining this family, she whispered. No, I said. You did that. I'm just ending the performance. She left without another word. After they were gone, it was just the three of us. Me, Adam, and Ava. Ava reached for my hand. Is it over now? I looked at her, this girl who had been lied to, used, silenced. Almost, I said, almost. The fallout came fast. The next morning, Lauren's exposé made headlines. Names were redacted in some places, but anyone who knew us could fill in the blanks. Ethan was put on administrative leave, then fired. Sponsors dropped his firm. He was no longer a pillar of the community. He was a cautionary tale. My mother tried to fight the charges. But the will, the emails, the recording from Dad, it was all too much. Her friends stopped calling. Her church issued quiet statement of moral disappointment. She moved out of state a month later. No one noticed. Ava chose to live with Adam. She stopped calling Ethan uncle. She started calling Adam Dad. I visited once a week, never bringing up the past, unless she asked. Sometimes she did. Most times she didn't. She was healing in her own way. And me? I deleted my accounts, one by one. Facebook, Instagram, Twitter, LinkedIn, gone. The last thing I posted was one sentence. For the first time in my life, I choose silence over explanation. A year passed. The world didn't end. The sun still rose. People still went to work, fell in love, paid taxes, and bought coffee with names misspelled on their cups. But I was different. I no longer measured time by holidays or seasons. I measured it by clarity. By the moments I could breathe again, by the nights I didn't flinch when I heard a door creak open, by the mornings I didn't reach for my phone, wondering what narrative someone else had written for me. It was on one of those mornings, sitting in the soft light of my new apartment, that I received the invitation. A podcast producer, Popular Raw Unfiltered, wanted to feature survivors of betrayal that came from the inside. I hadn't used my full name in months, but I knew word had spread. People talk, people always talk, especially when there's pain involved. It was tempting to say no, to keep healing private, but something inside me whispered, tell it. I agreed on one condition, that my name never be spoken. The episode aired 3 weeks later. I listened to it once, just once. I told my story slowly, deliberately, not as someone broken, but as someone who had bled and lived to talk about it. I spoke of my father, my mother, my brother. I spoke of Ethan and Claire, of secrets and silence, of Ava. I described how betrayal doesn't just come from the act. It comes from the people who watch it happen and say nothing. I ended with this. Some truths destroy you, but others set you on fire in the best way, so you can burn down the version of yourself that tolerated it all. The inbox I'd created for the podcast exploded. Most messages were from strangers. Some shared their own stories. Some just wrote, thank you. But one stood out. It was a handwritten letter, mailed with no return address. Inside was a small card with pink flowers in the corners. The writing was neat, careful. Dear Natalie, I know you said not to call you that anymore, but I wanted to. Just this once. I listened to your story. I knew it was you, even without your name. I cried, not because I was sad, but because I felt proud. You are the strongest woman I've ever known. Love, Ava. I sat with that letter for a long time, holding it against my chest like a heartbeat. I'd almost forgotten. Ethan, from what I heard, had tried to rebuild. It didn't last. The press buried him, and he eventually withdrew. Rumour had it he lived alone now, in a small rental, unemployed. I didn't check. I didn't care. My mother? Silence. She disappeared from our town like a ghost who'd been exorcised. No one mentioned her name. Even the neighbours who once sang her praises pretended she had never lived next door. It was a strange justice. Quiet, but permanent. And me? I wrote a book. It was the hardest thing I'd ever done. Every chapter felt like peeling off skin. But I kept writing, day after day, not for vengeance, not even for closure, for clarity. The silence that saved me hit the shelves 6 months later. It wasn't a bestseller, but it didn't need to be. It found the people it was meant for, women mostly, but some men too, people who had been gaslit, betrayed, overlooked. They found themselves in my pages and messaged me to say so. Eventually, I was asked to host a show, a small online series dedicated to helping women rebuild after betrayal. It was raw, messy, full of ugly cries and long silences, but it was real, and it was mine. Sometimes, after filming, I'd walk by the ocean, not the one near my old home, a different coast, a better one. I bought a little cottage by the water, simple, quiet. No reminders of who I used to be. One evening I sat on the back porch with a cup of tea and the wind in my hair. I opened a notebook, an old one I'd found while unpacking, my old journal. Most pages were scribbled and angry, but at the very end I found a blank page. I took a pen and wrote. In the end, I didn't need their love. I didn't need their apology. I didn't need their guilt. I only needed one thing myself. I paused, let the ink settle. Then I wrote the final line. Finally, I no longer needed anyone's approval except my own.